Hey friend, welcome back to the Special Kind of Motherhood podcast. Today's episode is for those of you who have a child who you would consider a picky eater. Maybe there's someone who has sensory processing disorder or they just have some sensory sensitivities surrounding food. Then I want to share with you 6 different ways that I have found to help the picky eaters in my house to actually begin to enjoy mealtimes. And number 6 is probably my kids' favorite. So let's go ahead and get started.
Hi friend, do you dream of having a garden but you don't know where to start? Do you want to switch to more natural products but feel overwhelmed by all the options? Do you believe that a holistic lifestyle would help your special needs kiddo but you're daunted by all the information out there? Welcome to the Special Kind of Motherhood podcast, where you will learn how to work towards your dream for homesteading, gardening, and holistic living in small, simple steps that won't overwhelm you. Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a wife, Jesus follower, and mom to some amazing kids. As some of my kids began experiencing health struggles and developmental delays, I decided it was time to switch to a holistic lifestyle. I quickly became stressed out and burnt out, feeling like I needed to change everything at once. I finally realized that I had to start making one small change at a time, then build from there. I learned to walk this holistic journey in a way that works for me and my family, without stress or overwhelm or constantly feeling like I wasn't doing enough. If you're ready to hear from another mama who understands what it's like to have no time and who can help you make changes towards better health for your family in a way that works for your specific life, then this is the podcast for you. Pop in your earbuds, reheat your coffee for the 3rd time, and let's do this.
Okay, friend, I do want to tell you before we get started that several of my kids do see speech and occupational therapists, and we have been working with one of our occupational therapists to move towards expanding our children's diets, and that's been extremely beneficial. So if you have a child who is struggling with some kind of sensory sensitivity surrounding food, I do highly encourage you to get connected with an occupational therapist if at all possible, and ask them if they can help you with different types of feeding techniques. And I really do think that's an invaluable resource. And so I do want to say before we get started, some of these ideas are things that I have come up with on my own, and some of them are ideas that our occupational therapist gave us. And I do really encourage you, if you're struggling with this, to try to get connected with someone who can give you some very specific tips according to what they're seeing with your child, and someone who is well versed in the area of helping a child who is struggling with trying different foods and maybe even some kind of sensory sensitivity when it comes to foods, because really that is an amazing resource and something I'm extremely grateful for. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Number 1 is that we have really been working towards having consistent meal times and a consistent mealtime routine. Now, if you are a mama who has children they have some kind of a special need, sitting down for meals can be very stressful. It can actually feel impossible. And I do want to encourage you, if that is you, I have been there before. I have children who are sensory seekers. They like to be moving. They like to be jumping. Sitting down to a quiet meal is not really their preferred task. And I will tell you, with that being said, we still have been able to work on this. Now, I'm not telling you it's perfect every time. I'm also not telling you that they sit for 30 minutes quietly. We do have to really try to work with them and set realistic times and all of that. However, what I have found is that being really consistent with what's expected as far as like, hey, we're going to sit for 5 minutes or whatever, just being consistent with that routine and like, this is what we're doing, not as in like a you're in trouble, this is what you have to do, but more so like, hey, this is the thing we're doing and this is what we're going to do. Like, it's an expectation versus you have to do this. It's not like a punishment, but more so like, this is what we're doing now, and making it more of that lighthearted, but also being consistent with it has been very helpful. This has really just helped my kids to know like what to expect, and then it gets them feeling comfortable at the table, which is really nice, because if they're not comfortable at the table where food is being served, it's less likely that they're going to be interested and engaged in the food being served. So getting them to sit down and feel comfortable, feel relaxed, having a good family routine, I have found to be very beneficial. Number 2 is if you have a child who has special needs, getting them to sit, like I said, for meal times can be really hard. So for us, we had to start with really small time expectations. And this was at the recommendation of our occupational therapist. She recommended starting with 2 minutes. If you can get them to sit for 2 minutes, then start with that, then work up to 5, then you could go to 10 or 15, whatever your end goal is. But starting with that, just setting a time. I even had to set a timer for a child, and hey, after 2 minutes they could get up, and then I bumped it back, And that seemed to work really well. We just worked our way up. And like I said, this comes back to them feeling comfortable sitting at a table, knowing what to expect. And then eventually they're likely to try saying, hey, this is a fun place. This is where fun things happen. What's this on my plate? What's this on my plate? They begin to get curious about their food. They associate meal times with fun family bonding time. And then for me, it's been like a time of getting them to sit helps them to focus on what's in front of them versus like eating, being distracted, which has been very beneficial. And like I said, I typically try not to set a timer. So it's not something that I'm like, oh, you have to spend your 5 minutes here. But when we first started, I did have to say, hey, I'll set a timer for 2 minutes. Let's just try this for 2 minutes. And then when that's done, you can get up, just to make it more of a low pressure thing. And so that they weren't feeling like they were having to sit there for an unexpected or unending amount of time, because, 2 minutes feels so short to me, but to them, sitting there at a table when they don't want to be there can feel like a really long period of time. So being clear with what we were wanting them to do really helped. And what I've found since then is that most days I really don't need to set a timer. I might have a child who says, hey, could you set a timer? And I'll be like, oh, in a few minutes I will, just to kind of extend our time out. And just, again, I'm encouraging that time of togetherness, which I find to be really beneficial. Number 3 is make it fun. So we have them here at the table. We're wanting this to be a good time. Then we should probably try to make it fun. We want it to be something that they look forward to, something that, like I said, they feel comfortable. Then they're going to begin to get curious about the stuff on their plate, all of that. So our routine typically is at lunch. I will give the kids like an audiobook. So I'll turn on an audiobook on my phone and they can listen to an audiobook or like a podcast that is reading some kind of a story or something like that. And they can listen to that while they sit and eat their lunch. And that gives them something that it's not screen time. So it's not like they're distracted with that. But if they're not having conversations amongst themselves, then they can have like a read aloud audiobook time. And that seems to work really well for my kids if they're struggling more so to sit at the table. And then what we do typically at dinner, my husband is home. And so it's much more of an engaged family time. And it's going to be more of like a bonding time. I think that this is a great time to try to really invest in your kids and get to ask your kids questions. Let them know that you're curious about them, curious about what they like, curious about their day. So typically what we do is we go around the table and we ask everyone to share what their favorite thing was from that day. And, my husband and I will share as well. Our kids will share. We have a couple of kids who love to try to guess what it is that we're going to say was our favorite thing for that day. And it just becomes a really fun time. And I also like this question specifically because I feel like it really helps us to get into the practice of gratitude, because we're having to look back on our day and think about the fun things, think about the things that we really liked. And of all of those really good fun things, what was our favorite? And I really like trying to help my kids to practice that gratitude, and myself, because I need it as well. And so that's why I love this question, but you could ask any question that you wanted to that fit your family, that seems to work well for your family. And I also want to say, if you have a child who is nonverbal, I still encourage you to ask them and include them in that. We have different dynamics, and it's just really special whenever a child who might not speak as much is able to answer that question all on their own, because it's become such a habit in the family that they're now understanding, hey, this is what this is. And then they can tell you what their favorite thing was that day. So if you're thinking, well, my child doesn't speak, then I just encourage you to go ahead and share, have your other kids share, you and your husband share, however that works, but include them and ask them as well. Number 4 is, when it is possible, and I know that this is not easy, try to let your kids help in the kitchen. Now, I get it. I have 4 kids. They do like to help in the kitchen, but there are days when I just need to get dinner on the table. And I'm not saying if it's that kind of a day, I'm not saying you have to have your kids help in the kitchen. Maybe it's not all the time. Maybe it's just a simple thing, like they're going to help you prep some vegetables. You can get the plastic kids knives on Amazon, and they could help you cut up vegetables, and they could be doing that right beside you while you're prepping something else. They could just help you stir a pot of soup. It could be very basic. It doesn't mean that they have to help you with the entire process, but getting them into the kitchen really helps them to feel invested in the meal. It gets them comfortable with the food that they're preparing. And again, I think it just gets them engaged and curious. And what I have found for my kids anyways is that when they're curious about the food, they are more open to trying new things. When they are closed off to it, it's just like, nope, it feels strange and new and I'm not interested at all. So a great way to get them more comfortable with food is to just get them in the kitchen with you. Again, start with small things. It doesn't have to be that they help you with the entire meal. And trust me, I do get it, because there are times whenever, I have a child who will ask to help and I'm like, I really just need to get this done. But I really do try. Then I have to remind myself, okay, create a small job for this child and let them do something, because they're wanting to be engaged. And I really, really do want to encourage for all of my kids to be engaged and involved in the kitchen, because I want them to be invested in feeding their bodies well and in eating good, healthy food. And when I can encourage that, I want to do that as much as possible. Number 5 is to let your kids grow their own food or help in the garden, and then use that food in your meals. So let them go out and help you harvest those green beans, cut the lettuce that you're going to use in the salad, pick a cucumber, and then let them go. Maybe you peel it if you don't like the peels. I don't. And then they use their little kid's knife from Amazon to cut up the cucumber. I have found that my children have tried more foods just from having them growing in our backyard than they have any other way. And I do share about this in a previous podcast episode, which I will link down below. And hopefully that will be encouraging to you as well. And then number 6, which is my kids' favorite, is to get fun utensils for your kids to eat with. And for us specifically, this has looked like getting fun placemats. So I just went to Walmart and they had some cartoon placemats. I picked out a different character or whatever pattern for each child, specifically for that child, knowing what they would really enjoy. I think I spent $2.50 a placemat, very cheap. And I took them home and made a big deal about it. Like, oh, this is where we're going to eat our food. This is yours. This is yours. This is yours. And then I just store the placemats in a specific spot. And my kids know that, like, wherever their placemat is, that is their spot. That is where their plate and their cup goes. And that is where they eat. And it's so funny because if I forget to get the placemats out, I will have a child or one or two of my children who will say, hey, can we go get our placemats? It's just something that they really enjoy. It makes it very special. I just feel like it adds like an element of fun and just that special. It's individualized to their personalities and they seem to really like it. There's also no confusion about where they're going to sit to eat because they each have their own specific placemat. Well, other ways that you could do this would be to get, like, they have the little animal, it's like a plastic toothpicks basically. You can get them on Amazon, where if you have like finger foods or instead of using a fork, you could let them like use like an animal little toothpick thing. I can't remember what they're called, in order to eat their food with. Something that works well for us as well is to get divided plates, because I have kids who don't like their food to touch, which I don't like my food to touch either. And they can just have like different types of food, especially as I'm putting new food on the plate. As long as it's not touching the food that they really like, they're okay with it staying on the plate. So having those divided plates can really, really help. And I will, you could also get them in like different fun colors. So maybe each child, maybe if you don't want to do the placemats, maybe each child has a specific color of like a plate and a cup that they use. And that might be really helpful for you. I just find that like whatever's going to excite your kid and make it fun, make it memorable, that is what I would focus on. And this can be kind of a little bit of a trial and error. So maybe you try something and it doesn't seem to work well. I think just continuing to come back to having those consistent routines, doing what you can to make it a very open and encouraging environment, making it fun, making it a time of connection and bonding. I really have noticed in our home, it has made a huge difference. And I hope that these tips help you as well. If you have a tip that you would like to share with us, please head over to our free Facebook community and share it with us there. You can find us at bit.ly/motherhood community. I'll also link that down in the show notes below. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and I'll see you back next time.
Hey Mama, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who is wanting to live more holistically without the overwhelm? Also, don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts to leave me a review. It blesses and encourages me to know that this show is helping you. All right, friends, it's time for me to go work in the garden and make some homemade bone broth. I will see you back next week.